Good morning, students. Today we are going to discuss a very important poet, a very interesting poet, and the name of that poet is Henry Vaughan. Vaughan, Henry Vaughan. And the poem which is prescribed in your syllabus is The Retreat. But before we discuss or start analyzing the poem, The Retreat, I would like to tell you something about the poet. Henry Vaughan was born in 1622 and he died in 1695. He is regarded as a religious poet because the majority of his poems have a religious background or religious setting. He considered himself the disciple, 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 student of George Herbert, who was also a well known clergyman. And his poems were also religious, and some of his poems are used in churches for altars and other rituals. So he considered himself the disciple of George Herbert. And most importantly, they belong to the metaphysical school of poetry. I hope that you remember John Donne when we read John Donne and his poems Go and Catch a Falling Star and Death Be Not Proud. So when we discuss these poems and when we started John Donne, I have told you about the metaphysical school of poetry. Meta means beyond physical, as you know that physical word. In metaphysical school of poetry, the poets of this school have used imagination, far off imagination, and conceit, which is called wisdom, wit. They have a very sharp wit. And due to their far off images and elaborated images, these poets are well appreciated in the modern poetry also, because modern poetry is also indirect and it is full of ambiguity and other things. So similarly, the metaphysical schools of poetry is the poetry of intellect. Instead of emotions and other things, they have also tested your IQ, your intellectual level. So that is the things. But the main thing is that they have used the images very cleverly and very succinctly, very accurately, you can say. And similarly, in religious poems also, you will find this kind of test. So I hope that you are now equipped that what kind of poem you are going to read about Henry Vaughan, written by Henry Vaughan. And the name of that poem is The Retreat. Now, what is the meaning of retreat? Retreats usually or generally used in the context of army, when the army withdraws or when the army is defeated, it withdraws, it retreats, it go back. Similarly, that in that sense, the poet uses the retreat. Here, the retreat is not from the front, from the army battle, but here the retreat, the poet is wishing that he would retreat to the blessed life which he enjoyed in heaven. And it is believed that in the world it is our second life. The first life we have lived in heaven, and And most importantly, he says there is no withdrawing as the army withdraws, but when you are born in this world, so it is not easy to return. The return takes place only after death, when your ashes are collected in an urn, in a pot. So in this, look at that how intelligently and how accurately the title of the poem is, and how cunningly the poet uses all kind of images. Mm. Now it is now look at the poem. It is commonly regarded that Vaughan's poem, The Retreat, inspired Wordsworth's ode on intimation of immortality, recollection in childhood. 2 centuries later, after 200 years, uh, because he was inspired by this poem, The Retreat. The Wordsworth wrote that famous poem. In that poem also he regrets the loss of innocence of childhood, because in childhood we are near to God, near to heaven. In what sense we are near to heaven or near to God? The poet explains it repeatedly in the poem. It was a period when a man is in close communion with God. Communion means he is in close conversation, you can say, in talk with God. Therefore, unlike most men who long to go forward, usually it is a wish, it is the desire of everyone that he should go forward. But the poet wishes to retreat to the blessed life he knew before birth, because the first life he lived in heaven. So he wants to retreat to that place once again. Vaughan describes the childhood period as the happiest. It is the happiest period of our life. He compares it with angel infancy. Look at the word, angel infancy. Usually the child is compared with angel. Uh, Infancy means in childhood, because a child never speaks lies. He is he doesn't know anything about the word of evil practices. Uh, uh, he speaks truth. So that's why that the child is regarded as angel infancy, because angel are the symbol of innocence, because they are all obeying the commands of the God, and they have nothing else to do. The angel is a symbol of innocence. Similarly, a child is free from all kinds of evils in the childhood. As he grows up, as the child grows up gradually, he learns all the evil practices of the world. When he grows up, he is equipped, he learns all the evil practices of the world. The poet also refers the birth in the world to a second race. Why he called the second race? Because the first life, the first race we have lived in heaven. In the opinion of the poet, the first life is lived in heaven. In this sense, the birth in this world is a second life. The period of childhood is near to God because he remembers the heavenly power, but no sooner he grows up, his soul is corrupted. As soon as or gradually as he grows up, he learns, he acquires all the evil practices of the world. Now, this is the practice, this is the life. But in childhood, there is some communication with God. as when we are returned from a journey, we remembers all the details of the journey. Similarly, the child who is just lived 1 or 2 years or 3 years in this world, he has some contact with heaven. He is in communion with God because he has not acquired or learned the evil practices, the bad habits, which is not permitted in any religion. And my soul would dwell on hour, and whose weaker glories spy some shadows of eternity. Eh, So that is the time. The childhood time is that there is some ray of hope, there is some communion when the child looks back, he sees the heavenly face of God. I hope that uh, uh, everyone would agree with the poet in this sense, but in the second part of the poem, he wishes that maybe it is possible that he would withdraw and enjoyed the life which he enjoyed, which he lived in heaven once again. Thank you.